Hi, and welcome, troublemakers. I'm very excited today to be sitting down and having a conversation with a remarkable young woman, and I'm very glad that you get to also have a peek into our conversation. Welcome, troublemaker.
Thank you very much, Given.
Glad to have you. Today I'm sitting down with Nalishebo Sinyama, a powerful young woman. I have personally known her from her days as a grassroots organizer, rose to a national organizer, rose to leading one of the most powerful movements in Southern Africa. And I'm really excited to be sitting down with her today. So let's jump right into it. Tell us a bit about yourself, apart from I could spend all day talking about you and telling people about all your great works. But we want to hear it from you. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Given. My name is Nalishebo Sinyama. I'm an African living in Somaliland, holding a Zambian passport and a Zambian NRC and voters card. Um, I am still a grassroots organizer. I lead work around ensuring that young people do actually have a voice in parliament and ensuring that young people do get a seat at the table.
Powerful. I want to start right from the beginning. How did you get into activism? How did you become an organizer? What got you there?
Um, my story of activism goes way back to 2018, 2019, when Zambia had terrible load shedding, given not the load shedding that we recently experienced. We would have 3 to 4 hours of electricity supply. Um, in 2019, we, as a country, had terrible load shedding. We would only have electricity supply for an hour or two. And in the area where I was staying, given, I do not come from a rich neighborhood. I come from the suburbs. Um, and my area would experience a load shedding from as early as 2 in the morning, and the electricity would only be back, let's say, at 1, then at 2 again it goes. So every time it's midnight, you'd always have to wake up, ensure that everything is ready. Once electricity comes, you have to charge your phone, you have to ensure that you iron your clothes. So that became a routine for me and people in my neighborhood. And I remember going to visit a friend who lives in one of these rich neighborhoods in Zambia, and they never had electricity shutdowns. And I asked her to say, what time do you get load shedded in your neighborhood? And she actually said, we don't get load shedded. So that really stuck with me. And when I went back home, I told one of my close friends, and I asked them to say, do you know that the next neighborhood for ours does not experience load shedding? And she was equally surprised. So we spoke about organizing a few of our friends. We were planning on a group of 10 to march to the utility company and just speak about our grievances to them, you know. Um, and my friend is a mobilizer. So she went drinking the very evening and told people at this bar and told them to say, we're actually walking to the utility company tomorrow. Me and Shebo, we have agreed to meet at Nalishebo's place. So the next morning, mom wakes me up and there are over 100 people at my gate. And we walk to the utility company and we already find a good number of people there. And it was a full-blown protest given. I remember being arrested. By then, I did not know about Youth for Parliament. I did not know about the global platform. But also, um, what that showed me was how powerful organizing and mobilizing is. I remember given posting on my social media platforms to say I'm being arrested. Me and my friends are being arrested because we went to confront the utility company. And a comrade of mine from Youth for Parliament, I did not know them then. Thompson reached out to me and said, can I call? Please share your number. So I shared my number with Thompson and I got to explain what had actually happened. And the time I arrived at the police station, given, I already found some support, some friends, comrades that were already there, ensuring that I do not spend the night. Me and my friends do not spend the night in police custody. So they managed to get us out. And I actually found out about Youth for Parliament at the police station. So the next day they told me to say, let's have a meeting at the global platform and let's see how best we can help your community. So I was then recruited as um, a ward organizer in my community. So after being a ward organizer in my community, given I then kept on elevating, because for me it was Youth for Parliament became a safe space. It became a home where I could be radical and no one talks about how I am a female and how I should behave and how I shouldn't be too radical as a young lady. So it became a safe space. It became home for me. And I rose in rank till I became part of the Central Command team of Youth for Parliament. And in 2021, I was part of the people that were deployed to join youth campaigns. And I think we really did amazing work. But also, given what that taught me, what that whole process taught me, is how organizing um, is a powerful tool for change. You know, I have heard people question the organizing in Zambia and how I'm currently organizing in Somaliland. The principle of organizing given does not change. The principle of organizing is a concept that remains the same. What changes is the context. How then do you implement in a context like Somaliland? So yeah, I think my work has been around organizing and ensuring that young people get to speak out, but also ensuring that young people and young women themselves are the front line of change.
Amazing. And I like that you speak to the power of organizing and how the context remains constant um, despite the different organizing environments. And I want us to get into that as somebody who's organized in Zambia and is now doing it in Somaliland. I want to jump into what you would say are some of the social justice differences or between Zambia and Somaliland. What have been some culture shocks for you as you've organized in both contexts? What have been some of the lessons and even some of the challenges, even as you compare the two different contexts?
Um, I have experienced a lot of culture shocks, but also understanding that we have different cultural backgrounds with Somaliland, Zambia and Somaliland. So after I got to Somaliland and just looking at the context I was about to start organizing in, I realized that there are more urgent issues to speak about and begin to organize around. You know, where our urgent issue in Zambia is ensuring that young people actually get to speak for themselves and actually get a seat at the table. In Somaliland, for me, I think it wasn't the same because there are more culture shocks that need to be addressed. I'll give you an example of how young women still have to undergo female genital mutation. For me, that was a culture shock that I felt needed to be addressed in the soonest possible way. And I am currently organizing around that. Being a feminist and having a privilege through the global platform that I'm currently working with to interact and speak to young women. And I remember given some weeks ago before I actually traveled here, we had a conversation with young girls that are between the age of 18 to 20. And we were talking to them about feminism. This is a concept that they feel should not even be spoken about, you know? And when we actually explained what feminism is and what feminist leadership looks like, they actually had a lot more questions because feminism is perceived as how can I put it? Feminism is perceived as ladies or women speaking against men, fighting the male gender, and ensuring that men do not actually have a voice for themselves. A whole different thing of what feminism is about. Um, And when we dived deeper into that conversation, one of the girls actually came to me during tea break and asked me a question to say, well, um, even if as a woman I get to go to school, I get to have an education, I get to have a job, my husband still has to be the head of the house. And she actually gave me an example of how her mother is a marketeer and how the mother always leaves home early in the morning, goes to the market, ensures that her children go to school, ensures that there's food for the children at home, and the father does not do anything. And then she asked me a question to say, but if my mom gets to provide everything that me and my siblings need, why does my father have to be the head of the house? You know, and for me, that was a question I couldn't even respond to because I come from an African background. I have also been raised to respect the male gender. So I did not know what words to use to address this question. And it has been stuck in my head, given. And for me, I feel these are more important issues to address in the Somaliland context. We have to speak about why women should speak against female genital mutilation. Believe you me, given, in as much as we're going to say maybe the women are okay with it. We had a conversation with the young girls, and you'd tell that most of them in that room had already gone through that process, and it did not sit well with them because they spoke about how they had to abscond school for a good number of days so that they could just heal, and they had to spoke about some of the infections they had to develop, and they spoke about how painful the entire process is and just how it affects them mentally as young girls. Yeah, so it is different. Like I said at first, the concept of organizing remains the same. The context may differ, but the concept of organizing still remains the same. It's just the tactics that need to be improved. How then do we ensure that some of the learnings that we have learnt through organizing in Zambia, how do we then transfer it to a context or in the thematic areas that Somaliland is currently implementing into, and also just ensuring that the learnings are transferable, but also have the same impact in that context.
Those are very powerful reflections, Nalishebo. I'd like you to speak to the importance of cross-border solidarity among activists, among movements across the African region, more of a Pan-African approach to organizing.
I think the issue of solidarity given is becoming more questionable to me, because after relocating to Somaliland, I really don't know if we as an African continent actually give ourselves that kind of solidarity, because Somaliland got its independence back in the 90s, but it is still not recognized as an independent state away from Somaliland, away from Somalia. So maybe we should start from there. How then do we recognize countries like Somaliland? That, because given every time I get to introduce myself to say I am coming from Somaliland, people actually ask, say, you mean Somalia, right? I'm like, no, I'm in Somaliland, but yeah, we're neighboring countries with Somalia. So we need to speak to how best do we ensure that countries like Somaliland get to have their own voices, but also gets to be recognized as an independent state away from Somalia. But also given the learnings, the different organizing learnings that we learned from different countries, how then do we ensure that the learnings from Zambia do not only speak to the Zambian context? How then do we get those learnings to also teach young people and young women in Ghana? How do we get to transfer the learnings from Ghana to Somaliland, and how do we get to get the learnings from Somaliland to a place like Zambia? Because looking at where we're going as Zambians, we are going to also be organizing in a fragile context like Somaliland. So how do we then ask the young people in Somaliland to say, how have you been advocating? How have you ensured that your voices as activists are heard? Ensure knowing that you're organizing in a fragile context. How then do we get those learnings and get to teach other African countries? So I think it has to start from how best do we get to transfer the learnings from one nation to another, but also the starting point is recognizing states like Somaliland as an independent state. Yes.
Yeah. Whew. Very interesting. And I like that you bring up that we can't even begin to speak to Pan-African solidarity in organizing when some states are not even recognized. Very powerful point that you bring up there. I want us to go a bit to frontline activism. In Zambia, in Zambia, we call them stone throwers. Wakaposa mawe. Well, protesters, frontline activism, and women in frontline activism. In from where I'm from, it's termed as very risky for women to be frontline activists. How have you navigated that? How have you? We've heard terms of you're a protester, you're too radical. No one, you. It would be very difficult for you. You're not a motherly woman. No one will, no one will marry you. Um, and we've had all these, and but beyond just the social and cultural norms and whatnot, just the risk of if the police come, if this happens, you're more at risk and whatnot. How do you navigate that as a frontline activist?
We're all at risk, given. We are all at risk. Gender does not define how powerful or radical someone should be. That is not the case, given. I have seen men being arrested and men crying because they have been arrested. And I have seen women get arrested and they're like, I don't care if you arrest me. Immediately I'm out of of the police cells. I am going back to organizing, you know. So for me, gender does not define how radical or how powerful one should be. We experience inequalities differently. We experience being sidelined differently. And most of these social issues affect us differently, given. I will give you an example of how I told you I come from the suburbs in Zambia. Water, basic water, I have to stand in a queue to access it. And there are other people in different parts of the country that freely have access to water, you know? So you do not define how powerful I speak out when it comes to water issues, how powerful I speak out when it comes to gender issues, because you are not feeling the pain that I am feeling as a woman, you know? And really, given I do not do not want to get married to a man that is not powerful. I do not want to get married to a man that is not radical. You know, I I I would rather be in a company of someone that is radical than waste my time with someone that cannot even speak out or rather express how difficult life is in Zambia. Um, I have been a victim of people coming to me and telling me to say, well, you're a young lady, you have to behave a certain kind of way. I'm not those kind of people, given. I would rather, while others are seated on their Facebook pages and writing about how the government is not doing anything good for their community, I would rather be standing in the street with a placard because I feel I get to be heard better like that.
Have you, as an individual, experienced intimidation, harassment, or backlash because of your activism?
Yes, I have.
Please do share with us. I think would like to have a feel of your experience.
I come from an African home. I have been raised by an African mom and an African dad. And most of the things that I believe in, or most of the things that I speak out to, do not reflect some of the learnings I have learned in my household growing up. I would give you an example of how I openly support the LGBTQI community. And I do that because I feel people are entitled to be who they want, given. And I remember a few years back, I trended for that in Zambia because Zambia apparently is a Christian nation, and they do not support immorality, as Comrade Matomola, one of the UPND cadres, defines it. Um, and when that happened, given, I was all over social media. I got insulted. Um, I remember my mom always waking up at 4 in the morning, coming to pray for me, casting out this demon that is in me and has possessed me. And every time she'd do that, I would ensure that I go to bed drunk so that every time she's praying, I do not just get to listen to some of the things that she is speaking to as she's praying. But also, given being a young lady and being in the activism space has not been an easy thing for me, because I'm either against I am either against policies, I'm either against what the government says, I'm either against about some of the cultural or religious acts that are happening, and I do not keep quiet about it. I freely speak out. I have lost friends because of my political stance. I have lost contacts with relatives. I have lost job opportunities. Well, I do not. So I feel at times I do not get invited to certain spaces or certain places because of my stance about a lot of things. So for me, I really, really hope people get to understand that activism is a way of life. Activism is a way of life. And this is how we get to express ourselves. This is how we get to live our lives as people.
Powerful. Activism is a way of life. It's not a hobby. It's not a
It's
job.
not a hobby. It's
It's
not a
not a
job.
job.
We do not get paid for putting ourselves in the front lines and speaking against the government,
That's so
because the
powerful.
government has got tools to even just take you out. You know, I'm speaking about Somaliland. I might not even have access to going back to the country. And these are things that really affect us as activists and as frontliners.
If there's a young woman somewhere sitting and there's an issue in their community and they are sitting and waiting for somebody to do something, what would you say to them?
No one is coming to help you.
Mm.
No one is coming. The world is Everyone in the world has got their own thing to do. Everyone in the world has got things they're addressing or things they're speaking to. Waiting for someone will not help you because no one is coming. You have to stand up, speak out for yourself, and ensure that you see the change that you want.
Amazing. You heard that. Get up, do something yourself, speak up for yourself, and that's the only way you get the change that we want. I want to speak about another part of your life, and that's the politics. Yeah, besides just being the frontline activist, an organizer, a movement leader, you have been a young woman in politics, contested to be adopted. Um, and tell us a bit about that, your experience with the entire journey. What got you to get up and want to contest?
Women have been marginalized for the longest time, and young people deserve a seat at the table. I decided to apply for adoption under the Patriotic Front, and I was not adopted given on basis of being young, but also throughout the adoption process. Given, I think that was one of the most traumatizing phases of my life because I was sexualized. I remember going to an interview and wearing a chitenge, and one of the political party officials actually passed a comment of how sexy I looked. That was pretty a very difficult phase for me, given I remember receiving messages in the middle of the night, meeting some officials, being asked to meet some officials at named lodges in Lusaka. One day, given, I will get the courage to mention their names. I will get them the courage to mention their names and publicly shame them. I thought when people speak about how women are sexualized in political parties, I thought it was just a rumor. But also, given politics is a dating game, and I'm now telling my comrades, my female comrades that are currently participating and running for office, to say you need to be as dirty as the men in the game. You need to treat politics as a game, because they know you're a woman, they know you're pregnant, they know you have a child at home that you have to breastfeed in the middle of the night, but they will still set those meetings late in the night, and they would only get to inform you 30 minutes before the meeting starts. And now you have to take a bath, you have to feed your children before you leave for that meeting. So you just end up not attending, and you'd show up in the morning and find out that the entire thing has changed, because they're now speaking to different issues that you were not even aware of. And that is how women have been sidelined in politics for the longest time, you know. Um, yeah, given. But also we need to ensure that women in political parties get to speak out and get to call out some of these demons. I'm calling them demons because that's what they are. Some of these demons that sexualize them in politics. Yes.
And that's a major challenge for young women in politics and women in politics in general. But I would want you to also speak to some of the other challenges that women and young women continue to face every time they try to engage in the political space. I know we've had conversations about how um, men were throwing around huge sums of money, and how did you navigate that? And also just speaking to some of the challenges and how young women can navigate these challenges.
Well, there's this, I think one of my comrades, Kunda, that accompanied me when I was going for my first adoption meetings, would bear witness. So I think because they were expecting an older woman to have applied for adoption, and I was just a young girl, so they thought like I had escorted one of the male candidates that had applied for adoption, and one of the officials walked out, and I was seated next to Clement Tembo, and one of these officials was telling Clement some of the questions he should expect. And I was there, I'm like, wait, is this supposed to be a transparent process? Like, why is one of the interviewers um, telling one of the other candidates the questions they should expect during interviews? And when I walked in the interview room, um, this man kept on firing hard questions to me. And I looked at him, I was like, are these the same questions you actually asked the candidate that recently walked out before I came in? Because these were not the questions that you were telling him. I was expecting you be asking the same questions because you told the other candidate. And this man was like, what candidate? So now I had to start telling him to say, oh, I was seated next to this candidate and you were telling him about this and this, you know. So politics, there's always favorites. It's not a game of equals, especially when it comes to women. But also, given being a young lady who had applied for adoption, I did not have the money. I had not done any work that could have earned me as much money as Comrade Clement Tembo, who actually is a very good friend of mine now, has. I was standing against people that have worked for big organizations, people that have saved as members of parliament and as councillors, and I have big businesses given. And I was just a young girl from Chilenja, you know. Um, I just had the dream. I had the dream. I did not even have money to pay my own nomination fee given. It's the comrades that came together and contributed the small sums of money, and I had applied for adoption. Going into campaigns, I did not have the car to take me to the nomination center. It was one of the youth comrades that had been elected that actually offered their car to say, "Oh, you know, I'm going to send my car and my driver. They're going to take you to the place where you're going to be having your interviews from, and everything else." Um, Young people and young women in politics go against people that have their retirement package to spend. I did not have that given. I had the ideas, I had the voice, and I had the plan. Comrade Clement got adopted. I joined his campaign team, and he lost the elections. Yes. Not that I'm saying it's a good thing that he lost, but he lost the election.
Well, yeah, I like that you're able to share your journey and reflect on the challenges that you experienced as a young woman in politics, and looking forward from your experience and just going forward. How do you think women can challenge political systems that have historically been designed to exclude them?
They have to get in the space and also develop a system that excludes the men. That is the only way you can take up leadership given. We need to stop um, the politics of young women should be included. Young women need to be included. Young women should go into the space and claim the space given.
Why? Somebody is sitting and listening to you and thinking, but why?
Why shouldn't they?
Why is it important for them to?
A young girl somewhere in Kanchiria does not have menstrual hygiene products that can sustain them throughout the day by attending class the whole day. Who is speaking for that young girl in Kanchiria? Because the men do not know how young women get to experience or get to take in this menstrual thing, you know. But we need someone that has gone through that phase to speak for that young girl in Kanchiria.
Speaking with you is so enlightening. It makes me feel like you have lived three different lives all in one. As I interact with Nalishebo, the organizer, Nalishebo, the movement leader, Nalishebo, the young woman in politics. It's so enlightening to see what young women can do when they get up and decide to do it. While we're still on the discussion around women in politics, you've spoken to the Zambian context. I want to hear more about how different it is in the Somaliland context. Do we have young women taking up leadership roles, participating?
Yes, given we do have a powerful set of young women in Somaliland. And I know that young women in Somaliland are ready to take up the mantle of leadership. Um, I have interacted with a few radicals here and there, and you'd tell that young women are actually informed in Somaliland. Young women are ready to take up the mantle of leadership. Young women are speaking out when it comes to leadership, and they're able to express themselves and just freely talk about some of the changes they want to see in their country. The problem given is the cultural norms. How then do they get to navigate? How then do they get to navigate where they are as a country, but also ensure that they do not interfere with the cultural norms that have been placed for them to follow and placed for them to set sail. Given I have lived my whole life as a Christian, I do not perhaps maybe practice it as it should be done, but I have identified myself as a Christian, and having to relocate to Somaliland has also just played a role in how I view things, because Somaliland is an Islamic state. This means that how I dress, how I speak, how I act also has to be different. And I'm also just trying to navigate how best young women can organize to just get themselves into seats of influence, But also, given Somaliland has got a good number of members of parliament, and only one of them and only one female serves as member of parliament. So these are also issues that young women in Somaliland are also trying to navigate and speak to.
Oh wow, just one a woman in parliament. Interesting. Well, we keep hopeful that the figures will change.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's so good to hear about the context in Somaliland, but I'll throw you back to Zambia, and our elections are coming up in less than 3 months now. And I know that you've been following the process very closely, from voter registration to adoption and up to where we're going. Your reflections on the process this far?
Um, I am very much excited about the elections in Zambia. I'm really looking forward to seeing the outcomes of the elections. Seeing that a lot of young people were left out during adoption processes given. And there's a loyalist of different political parties, but they have said, you know what, screw the systems of our political parties. We are running as independents. So I am very hopeful to see how many young people actually gets to be elected. I know, and I'm very certain and sure that a good number of young people are going to be elected. I know we need powerful radicals like former member of parliament for Mambilima, Honorable Jean Chisenga. I hope she goes back to parliament, because Honorable Jean Chisenga has been one of the most radical young people that we got elected in
Young women.
2020.
It's important.
Young women and young people and a young person that was elected in 2021. I hope we do get to see more independent members of parliament, because I feel they have the power to just freely speak out to issues that are directly affecting their constituencies, but also affecting the nation. Um, I hope I do come through to cast my vote, given I am really, really looking forward to the outcomes of the elections. And I am very much hopeful that a good number of young people will actually be elected.
We see a lot of candidates that had filed in to contest withdrawing now, and leaving it to the ruling party to then go unopposed in a lot of the about over 5 parliamentary seats, over 10 council seats. How does that make you feel?
It's actually 16 parliamentary seats.
Hmm.
Seeing that 16, the UPND has already secured 16 seats, is not a good sign for our democracy, given our democracy is under threat as a country. And I was actually speaking to comrades from Youth for Parliament, and I told them to say they're going to have it hard in convincing young people not to withdraw from the race. But also, we have seen how young people are being followed and being threatened to pull out of the game. But we have also seen the national youth chairperson of the ruling party, the UPND, freely speaking out on how the UPND will not allow its members to run as independent candidates. Perhaps that has also played a role in why a good number of people are withdrawing from the race. Um, yeah, but I am still hopeful, given I know a good number of young people are going to be elected. Yeah.
And we look forward to that. I'm equally excited to see that young people stood their ground. Those that were left out of adoptions proceeded to contest as independent. And we really do hope that the Zambian people do right by them. As we end and conclude this conversation, I want you to speak directly to the young people in Zambia as they head to elections. Finshi ulefo abeshibe like finshi bafuire okuchita finshi bafuire okwishiba bakachitesha bevanzelo. Like I want you to speak to them, and I'd like you to speak to them in a language that they would genuinely get your message.
To the young people in Zambia, Given, I want to say Jindi Jamana, Ntao Yasila, Inshta, Naipwa. We owe this to ourselves. Tifunika, pa 13 August, kuchita ensure that taima gamalaini ya zankala ni atari tenti chiteinjua tenti kanyamule manzi ine personally ni vote la Patimoth Mwanakatwe niendo vote la Mainda Simata as member of parliament wanga niendo vote la Onino as councillor wanga kuchilenje ward 8 na kuvote la youth mayor Mwila.
I love that you're saying that. And they need to know that once awewe watomola ni my young people, and we are deliberate. We're calling on once kwebadidi ukaona chenyi muntu amenaziba ve upitamo na iwe mfana monga iwe fakapo X.
Faka X per youth. Given.
Thank you so much, Nalishebo.
Cool.
It's been an amazing conversation. I have absolutely loved having you, having this conversation with you, a natural troublemaker, and to hear all your beautiful trouble stories has been very, very, very inspiring. And thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much, troublemakers. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have.
Hi! We hope you enjoyed the conversation on this episode of Troublemakers and feel inspired to stir up some good trouble in your own community. Do feel free to check out our other episodes and subscribe to Troublemakers Podcast in your preferred podcast app. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook as troublemakers.podcast for all the latest updates, behind-the-scenes content, and sneak peeks of what's coming next. We also love to hear from our listeners. You can email us via troublemakersthepodcast@gmail.com or simply drop a DM through our social media. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode, take a moment and share it with a friend or leave us a review. It really helps us grow our community of troublemakers. Keep shaking things up.